Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. Today, it's none of your business. It's also none of mine. I wanted today to talk about having the grace to not involve yourself in things that you really have no business being involved in. This is something that takes a bit of nuance to understand and to really comprehend, but some people do not understand that they are not always the main character. You can be the main character of your own life, but when it comes to other people and their decisions, their plans, what they want to do, who they want to include or invite to something, in any way, shape, or form, just being able to have the grace and the common decency and sense to say, oh, this is actually none of my business. I should stay out of this. I've encountered situations ranging from friendships to family members to acquaintances to full-on enemies who seem to get their nose and their little grapply hands on things that just have nothing to do with them. And I've had a few friends like this in the past, but I think this is one of the traits that I really filter for. And today I can confidently say that none of my friends do this. They don't interfere in things that they just know they have no business being in. They have the grace to just say, you know what, this has nothing to do with me. I can support someone from afar, or if they want me to be closer, I can, move closer to the situation. But at the end of the day, I hope myself and my friends and my family know when to get involved and when to not. Because oftentimes, if you are outside of a situation, no matter what you do to try and move yourself closer to the situation, it's always a bad move. Whether there's a party or a wedding or an event or a night out that it's happening, but you're not necessarily invited to it. You're not in the inner circle. You're not connected. And oftentimes we try and scooch ourselves a little closer to the situation. And this can be through texting someone, confronting them, just showing up to the thing. And in any of these situations, moving yourself closer to a situation like this is never appreciated. You will never have someone say, oh, I'm so glad you crashed this. Unless you're really charismatic, but please, again, you're not the main character. I'm not the main character in this situation. Let's just let people do the things they want to do. This can especially happen while people are grieving, while there's a special event, maybe a baby was born, maybe there's, a special birthday coming up, an anniversary of some kind. But in any of these situations, it is really important to kind of know your place. And this is where it comes to talking about grace. This is something that is not talked about enough, but we admire people who have grace. It is this energy, this understanding, this nuanced ability to keep your mouth shut, essentially. A lot of people will say, oh, grace is about looking effortlessly beautiful and ethereal and feminine and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure there are situations where grace is like that. But the most of the time, grace is just about not saying the thing that you want to say, or not shouting your opinions from the rooftops. I think a lot of people are very activisty and they want to be the main character, and so they shout their opinions, they get into wild debates, they argue, and they go round and round in circles with the same kind of people. These people often confront each other, and the people outside of that, the people who just don't want to bother with it, don't want to explain their views, don't want to have to confront some unconfrontable issue that they know is just going to ruin their day or their Thanksgiving or whatever it might be, just keep their mouth shut. And I think grandmas are really good at this. I know both of my grandmas were so good at being very graceful. And when there was a disruption at a party or someone brought up a taboo topic, they either wouldn't address it at all, or they would politely change the conversation or stop it entirely. And this takes a lot of skill, and I definitely don't have the skill to teach you that. But it's this ability and this grace, this idea that you can diffuse a situation and you can remove something like this and nuance it into a corner or box it up. And while sometimes when it comes to like your emotions and your feelings, you're not supposed to box them up, sometimes you have a intrusive thought. Sometimes you want to argue with your uncle at the table, but you know he's not going to change his views. You're not going to change your views. And so just having the grace and the appreciation of whoever set up the event, typically a grandma, having the grace to not spoil that event and just appreciate what's going on. Grace also ties into wisdom a lot. And you guys know me, I talk about wisdom a lot because I'm really interested in this idea of experience plus knowledge and how it creates this kind of aura around someone. And we want to come to them for wisdom and guidance. And you can do that with someone who has grace as well. I don't necessarily know if grace and wisdom are inherently tied. I suspect they are. I expect and suspect that having wisdom gives you grace. It gives you the idea of like, I'm just not going to bring this up. It's none of my business. It's not a situation that can change. And we're just going to leave it as it is. So I suspect the two are connected, but the starting point is just understanding when your business ends and other people's business begins, and not crossing that line, not slipping like a foot in your mouth, not saying something stupid, not, really messing up those finite and very nuanced things. We give children a lot of grace because they don't know these social faux pas, they don't know these rules, they don't know the intricacies. And as you get older, you're kind of expected to understand what is done. Like it's understood that if you go to a funeral, you're going to abide by the dress code and you're going to be respectful and you're not going to, speak ill of the dead. And there's all these sort of wives' tales and wisdom within these sayings that children are sort of slowly taught. We're taught in fairy tales and nursery rhymes and the books we read and the books we're read to. And you slowly accumulate this wisdom, and you're also accumulating grace. You're accumulating this ability to just not get involved. When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was get involved with everything, older cousins and older siblings, and just I wanted to be in everybody's business. I wanted to know about it. I wanted to talk about it. Nothing was sacred. Nothing was off the table to explore or talk about. And as a kid, that's kind of what you're supposed to be, and then you're told by adults, and I feel like a lot of my childhood was told, no, Jax, don't do this. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, just wait. You can ask your questions later. Remember, only tell Santa one thing that you want. You don't have to go off the whole list of everything. And so you just accumulate this over time. But if you are, I'm going to say over the age of 20, 22, you should be starting to pick up these kinds of nuances. And I'm sure older people can attest to this. And regardless of your age, please leave a comment based on wisdom and having the grace not to get involved into a situation. When you feel like you can make an active difference and a change that's really positive, you have to weigh that. You have to weigh whether you want to do that, whether it kind of breaks the social decorum, and understand that there are things that you don't bring up. I'm sure that you talk differently to your parents than you do to your friends or your grandparents or a family friend. These are just the ways that we understand the social communication, and we understand what's our business and what's not, and what we can talk about and what we can't talk about. And it takes time, but I really think everyone should, first of all, mind their own business, myself included. Second of all, understand and have that grace for people and have a bit of empathy and see it from their side. And that, I think, also connects with grace a lot, and having this ability to see what they would want and, have that perspective. I have a few very activisty cousins on either side of the political spectrum, so don't come at me. But I can see in my grandmother's eyes that it very much frustrates her when one of these cousins decides to get on their soapbox and talk. And while there might be like some serious change and stuff, that change is not happening at the dinner table, and it's certainly not happening with relatives. So unless you're coming to it with a genuine, honest interest in how these people have the view that they do, You're not convincing anybody. And I'm sorry to the activists in the comments, but you're just not. Activism is a very controversial and nuanced subject. And if you want to do it right, study it. Actually look at it. Don't just take your views and try to shove them down someone's throat. I don't care. I'm sorry. But also having the grace to understand when and where a conversation like that can happen, and when and where you are pushing your limits, or you're pushing your boundaries, or you are pushing the social framework and fragility of a situation. Anyway, let me know what you think about minding your own business, having the grace to understand when a situation needs someone to speak up or needs someone to shut up. Thank you for watching. Definitely leave a comment. Let me know what you think. This is one of those topics that I definitely don't have all the answers. I'm not 100% right. I'm sure there are things in here that are vastly wrong, or, you know, the activists will come for me, or, you know, the grandmas will come for me, but let me know what you think. And as always, have a beautiful day.